We have three scripture readings this morning. The first one is from the 56th chapter of Psalms, the 3rd and 4th verse. When I am afraid, I put my trust in you. In God, whose word I praise, in God I trust, I am not afraid. What can flesh do to me? From Isaiah, 41st chapter, verse 10. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be afraid, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you, I will uphold you with my victorious right hand. And from the book of Matthew, the 25th to the 27th verse of chapter 6. Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink. And can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your span of life? Thus ends the reading.
Thank you, Dennis, for sharing our scripture with us today. In 1940, W.H. Auden penned his Pulitzer Prize-winning book, The Age of Anxiety. In the 1940s and 50s, if that was the age of anxiety, then today we must live in the age of high anxiety. Stress, anxiety, and worry are at an all-time high. There seems to be so much to fear these days. Terrorism, global warming, mounting deficits, school shootings, and identity theft, to just name a mere fraction. We see dramatic social and technological change that adds to our anxiety. 24-hour news comes to our phones and our TVs and our tablets and our smart watches. We feel a vibration every time the stock market declines or news breaks of a terrible accident, an earthquake, or a mass shooting. How can we not feel a level of anxiety with all of that? Most of us wrestle with some combination of fear and worry and anxiety from time to time. Now, my stress relates to my job these days. It used to relate to my children. And that's the case for many of us. For me, hardly a day goes by that I don't feel some sense of tightness in my chest, thinking about the weekend's service, the next finance report, or the people in the congregation who are struggling. I wonder what you worry about. What makes you fear? What gives you anxiety? My stress is nothing compared to the 57 million Americans, more than 1 in 6, who suffer from anxiety disorders. One of them is a niece of mine. She just started Lakeland College just a few weeks in, and already she's wondering if she can do it. Her anxiety is so high, it makes her ill. These folks have moments that feel like they're having a heart attack. Palms get sweaty, skin clammy, air waves restrict, feelings of dread, and the fight or flight mechanism kicks into full force. This is the most common mental illness, anxiety, in America. What's puzzling about the high level of anxiety and fear today is that by all outward measures, we have less to fear today than ever in the history of the human race. We're living longer than any previous generation. Our standard of living is higher. We've defeated most of the terrible childhood diseases of the past. Crime rates are dramatically down in spite of what you hear sometimes on TV. They've come down over the last 20 years. Daniel Gardner begins his book, The Science of Fear, by noting we are the healthiest, the wealthiest, the longest lived people in history. And we are, interestingly, the most afraid. This is one of the great paradoxes of our time, he says. Much of our worry, anxiety, and fear comes from two of our brain systems that are designed for our protection, for our self-preservation. One of these we know as the flight or fight mechanism. It is the body's smoke detector. When it detects a potential threat before your conscious brain ever processes the threat, your early warning system has already sounded the alarm. Hormones are released, triggering a cascading series of effects in your body. Your heart rate increases. Blood is shut down to unnecessary functions in your body and diverted to the muscles. Your blood pressure increases. Your pupils dilate. All as your brain prepares your body for the imminent threat. There's a second mechanism built into our brain that is intended to anticipate future events, particularly needs like food or water or shelter, but also threats. This system doesn't respond to current threats, but it prepares you for things in the future. This system anticipates and brings to mind things that are potential threats or simple things critical for you to be mindful of. It might snow. Take your gloves. It's cold. Have the kids wear their coats. Wear your seatbelt. You might get in an accident. The problem, though, with this system is your imagination. Your imagination coupled with the data that you receive from others, from the news, from old tapes that run in your mind. They can lead you to anticipate threats that are not real, or which are real, but whose chance of affecting you are minimal. The imagination can inflate threats and lead you to catastrophize, to assume the worst possible things are going to happen. I love the acronym for fear that Adam Hamilton shares in his book, Unafraid. Much fear is the result, he says, of F, false, E, events, A, appearing, R, real. False events appearing real. One key approach to unhealthy fear from the field of therapy is sometimes called exposure therapy. It's a common sense approach you know as simply confronting your fears. Often when we feel anxious about something, we totally avoid it. But the worry and the anxiety and the fear, it remains, and sometimes it grows and it grows and it grows. Exposure helps you clearly identify the source of your fear or anxiety, and then to slowly face your fear by exposing yourself to it, usually starting with small steps and gradually increasing the level of exposure. Since our fears are typically unfounded, when we confront them face to face and find them and acknowledge them and own them, they no longer control us, we control them, and we conquer them. While the psychological and medical practices to address worry, anxiety, and fear are important, they are very important. Let's remember that for the last 3,000 years, humans have coped with worry, anxiety, and fear with the help of and I got in trouble when I made this a question at Bethel, how do we cope with our fear, and how have they for years? Any idea?
Faith.
Faith. In Bethel, someone yelled out, alcohol. I said, oh my goodness, I never will ask a question like that again. Back then, 3,000 years, they didn't have Xanax or Zoloft or psychotherapists to talk to. The words fear or afraid, friends, it appears over 400 times in Scripture. The people of biblical times had a lot to be afraid of. Wild animals in the wilderness, illness, enemies, wars, and destruction, the occasional natural disaster, floods, droughts, famine, dying in childbirth, death by disease, as well as a world that felt more dangerous in part because they did not understand it yet. They didn't have the science yet. The most often repeated refrain in Scripture is found on the lips of God and angels and Jesus over 100 times. God says to his people in a variety of ways throughout Scripture, do not be afraid. I'd like to add with that, as God says, for I am with you. When I read texts like this, I read them as though God were speaking directly to me. Do not be afraid, Sue, for I am with you. I may even respond to each line of Scripture. Thank you, Lord, that you are with me. Thank you. Help me not to be afraid, please. You are my God. I trust that you will strengthen me, that you will help me, that you will hold me in your mighty hand. Instead of imagining that I'll die of diabetes-related illness, or that my future is grim as far as ever walking normally again, or that my enemies will defeat me, or that the world is on the verge of falling apart, in prayer, in praise, and in singing, I imagine and trust that God is with me, that God will strengthen me and help me and hold me by his mighty hand. Friends, don't give in to false events appearing real. Try facing your fears and put your trust in God, praying and even singing to Him, imagining the very things that He promises you will find are true. And you will find a peace that passes understanding, that will guard your heart and mind each moment of your